right, so today we're going to talk about a topic which is both risky and unknown. And unknown because we actually have not prepared in any way for this conversation, and risky because we've chosen to title it Eros and Creativity. And well, these are very edgy topics. To me, they're very similar qualities. But I'm going to just begin a conversation with Lindsay on this area, and we're going to see what happens. So, Lindsay, do you want to take it away, or do you want me to go with something here?
Well, I thought a good place to start would be to just describe what you mean by Eros, just because that word can be defined different ways to different people.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe I can do the same, and together we can kind of flesh out what we're wanting to touch on.
Yeah, so for me, Eros is it's a pretty arcane quality actually, because for most people they see the manifestation of it or even the conditioning around the manifestation, but not the thing itself. And to me, the quality of Eros comes when we get to the edge of the edge of the known somatically, psychologically, interpersonally, socially. And that edge of the unknown takes us into something that we can't actually enter, which is a space of emptiness. And the quality of emptiness and the quality of structure, which is what we know as ourselves, when they interface, there's a pushback, there's a resistance to that emptiness. And that pushback is the creative. And because it has a lot of energy to it, we could say it's the erotic. And where it oftentimes gets captured and confused is in sexuality. But to me, it's much broader, wider, deeper than that. And yeah, that's how I see the erotic.
Yeah, so it's sort of like the place where emptiness is burgeoning into reality, into isness, like right at that fulcrum.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And it has manifestation, but the manifestation is not the thing itself. So this is something to be, this is why it gets confusing around sexuality, because sexuality, of course, is something that's heavily taboo, conditioned, pushed down from very young age in our systems. And so when it shows up in overwhelming fashion oftentimes,
Mm.
and it obscures the actual energy. The actual energy is actually passing through, to me, all aspects of life. So in some sense, all aspects of life are sexual, all aspects of life are erotic.
I agree. I haven't told you, but I'm reading a book called China Root, and it's about the Chinese roots of Zen. And basically, the point of the book is that Zen that we have in the United States is like pretty wildly different from the context in which it was originally born. So, anyways, it's a cool book.
Mm.
But one of the things that I loved is that it described in the Chinese language and in the Chinese conception of language itself, things only exist the moment they're named. So the word for something and the thing coming into existence happen in the same moment.
Mm.
And a thing like a mountain isn't a mountain until you call it a mountain. And the moment you call it a mountain, it becomes a mountain.
Mm.
And then as the words fall away, the thing itself falls away. So that fulcrum of which I also, yeah, I like to call it Eros, of just like reality being born, um, is true also with words. So I'm sort of curious in this dialogue
Mm.
to stay on that edge where our words are describing things that don't exist until we describe them.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Well, this is
yeah.
interesting because the language, which is conditioned by our particular language, right? Our particular language of English
Mm-hmm.
is quite different than Chinese or many other languages. So we really have these almost split universes, right? Where language and reality has diverged from each other, which makes it a very interesting interface when you learn another language or you meet another person who has another language, because we're very language centric.
Well, that's the thing I think that's like heartbreaking and awesome about anything manifest is to exist. It's one thing and nothing else. So it's kind of desperately non-inclusive. So of course, different languages are going to narrow and limit what's possible, but that exact narrowing and limiting is the kind of beautiful haiku form of reality, the fact that it's, limited.
Yeah, it's beautiful until we lose track of the fact that there's something else besides that limitation, right? So then we
Yeah.
become ideological, we become constrained, and language becomes culture. And then culture becomes division, and then we have all the beginnings of essentially war within ourselves, because language can divide us from our own somatic experience, our own inner experience, our own energetic experience, right? This is how we've been injected really with societal patterns. We're like babies. There's no language. There's just like blurry stuff. And then, yeah,
Undifferentiated
undifferentiated too.
Yeah,
And it's
yeah.
a beautiful space. And of course, a baby is in a beautiful space. A baby can't survive or can't function, right? So they have to find some technology. They have to grow physically, obviously, to survive. And they also have to have some technology, which language is really good at constructing. But with that comes the parental condition that you are, and then I love you. Oh, now I don't love you because you just did the wrong thing, right? So there's this subtle construction that's happening all around us. So the partitioning of reality that you're talking about is absolutely fascinating, because it is creating these structures like crystals that are growing out of
Right.
mineral beds or whatever.
Like bones filling up the goo of our bodies so that we can stand upright and function in all kinds of ways we couldn't if we remained in
Mhm.
a sort of amoebic, undifferentiated
Mhm.
oneness state.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's beautiful. But how does that, I guess the question that we can look at is, how does that beautiful structure that's constantly growing up through the occurrence of the meeting of a form, how energy is formed out of this, what I would say is the resistance to emptiness.
I would say it differently, but
Yeah, okay. How would
yeah.
you say it? Before we go any further, let's
Well,
have two crystals in the room.
uh, I notice that I have a bit of reactivity. I have
Mm,
a bit of resistance to your framing of Eros and the manifest world as a resistance to emptiness.
mm,
Um, I'm not totally sure why,
mhm,
but I tend to frame it more as a creative burgeoning out of emptiness. In
mm,
other words, sort of an inherent goodness
mm,
to the structure that exudes from nothing,
mhm.
as opposed to resistance to me has like a negative thing, like emptiness is better. And
Mm.
you're resisting
You
the
mean it's
emptiness.
not?
I don't think so.
Okay, so tell me, I don't quite get the mechanics, if you will. I don't know if we can use that language.
Mm-hmm.
So emptiness is where there's nothing at all, right?
Mm-hmm.
We can use that name, but it really can't touch it,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because there's nothing to touch it. There's nothing, um,
To reflect on it,
yeah, it's just
there's
like there's nothing.
yeah,
That's the nature of nothing.
yeah.
But we can say there is something in the universe. That's pretty clear. There's something. Now, what's the mechanics between nothing and something? Between nothing and the movement of creativity. In other words, how does the universe, even my universe or your universe or our universe, get created then?
I mean, that's a great question. To
Mhm.
me, resistance as a construct is just as arbitrary as any other mechanic mechanics that I might use to fill in that very mysterious thing. Like, what does take the undifferentiated into the differentiated? I mean, this is a bit circular in reasoning, but you could say Eros is the thing that seduces the nothing into the something. But then Eros is the something itself.
Yeah, well, I mean, in the Hindu mythology, that's exactly what is how it's portrayed, actually, is, Shiva is the unmoving stillness, sitting there in meditation, and nothing, there's nothing. There's just the one pointedness, and then, Shakti comes along and does her dance, and she evokes it through Eros, the ejaculation from Shiva, who's like unmoving. It's like, nothing's going to move me. It's like, yeah, right, buddy, watch this. And then this erotic occurrence happens with the ejaculation, which is the creation of reality. So this is a metaphor, like a symbol system or myth that talks about what you were talking about.
Right. So that myth would say, to your question, that both the emptiness, Shiva, and the isness, Shakti, are fundamentally so. There isn't one that is better than the other. They're both fundamental. And I don't know, I agree that there's something about absence that feels more fundamental than presence. It's somehow primary, it's somehow the ground, and yet presence, I don't know why it's so, I see it as a celebration more than a resistance, personally. But I don't know if,
What's the it that's a celebration?
the
Manifestation?
the manifestation. Yeah, the fact that we get limited, the fact that we become this thing and not that thing, and then there's the 10,000 things.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously Shiva got convinced of that, but then it was like, hey, you didn't do the dishes, right? So like you get the seduction happens, reality comes, and with reality comes division, right?
Suffering.
Comes conflict.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that Shiva probably has some regrets about that ejaculatory response, like maybe the stillness was actually a pretty cool place to hang out. So you're getting a call. Do you want to take it live?
I'm not sure. It's on
Oh,
my
I'm getting
phone.
a call. Okay,
Yeah,
never mind.
okay. Do you
I'm
want to
not
put
gonna,
your
no,
phone
I'm
on
not
Do
gonna,
Not Disturb?
no, I won't be
Okay,
taking that
okay,
call.
okay.
Yeah, but thank you. Yeah. So,
Okay, yes, not wanting to ejaculate, bummed about it, didn't do the dishes.
yeah, yeah. So
Crap.
this is
Yeah.
so we say, like, what's more primary? I don't know if there's more primary, there's just primary. I mean, physicists would say that dark matter, which is really the absence of anything, any charge, any substance, dark matter is the vast, vast bulk of the universe, the actual universe that's measurable or not measurable in the case of dark
As it
matter,
were.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so in that sense, we could say, in that perspective or from that viewpoint, nothingness is primary, but nothingness obviously doesn't reside in itself because we have a somethingness. So I think this is the question, maybe a little esoteric, but is there a directionality to that nothingness that you're calling the erotic draw from emptiness? Is it coming from emptiness itself, or is it coming from this erotic charge from outside of itself? Right? So,
Good question.
yeah, when
Yeah.
Shiva's sitting there in stillness, there is nothing else, right?
Yeah.
So it's only in this primordial occurrence of the feminine and the erotic. And so this is to me, that's a description of resistance to the state itself. Like the state of emptiness is not, it's not inherently stable.
I think it's fine how you frame it as
Okay.
resistance. I don't like it.
Okay.
But that's okay.
Okay.
I mean, it's not how I frame it, but
Well,
I get
let's
what
say
you
that.
mean. You know, if you look at resistance less judgmentally or less sort of emotional human dynamic and more just the actual mechanics of like pressing against as opposed to going with,
Mhm.
then, you know, the whole reason I stand up is because I'm resisting the ground.
Yeah, but then you're leaving the camera, and so you become nothingness. As you leave the camera
Oh,
view,
wow, it's all
you
connected.
disappear into the, first of all, the pixelation goes into nothingness. Right now, at least you have pixelation to function in. So,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I had some deep thought earlier, but it's gone now.
Yeah, that happens.
Yeah.
Back into the emptiness, you
Yes,
see what I'm
yes.
saying? But then if I mean, this is not a very dynamic an online presentation, but emptiness will, we can go into stillness or emptiness,
Yeah.
but it will have a, there'll be a resistance to that.
Well, that made me remember what I was thinking, which is I posit that there might be some kind of skill to vacillating between these states,
Mm,
like returning from a place of highly differentiated, highly discerning consciousness back to one thing,
mhm,
um, which, from the perspective of the Eros world, you could call death,
mm,
right? It's just like the relaxation into
mm,
non-specific isness.
mhm,
And I do feel like there's a skill in me that seems to be naturally growing. I feel like I often have to learn it over and over again, but there's something where I do feel like I can relax and sort of non-resist the expression into differentiated presence and then non-resist the relaxation back into
mhm.
nothing.
Yeah, but you're suggesting those are two different states,
Well, I
right?
think that through experiencing them perhaps more unified,
Yeah,
then it's less difficult to
yeah.
vacillate. And then I don't quite know how resistance is even a part of that because it's just the lava lamp
Mhm.
of life doing its
Yeah,
thing.
yeah. So yeah, that's the level, that's the energetic space, right? Where you can see form is changing, but what I am is not the form, or
Right,
this form or that form,
right,
right? So this is a liberation in a sense from the identification with a particular form, like I'm a young man. Oh, now I'm an old man. Well, I wanted to be a young man, or like
right.
I'm in love with you, but now you're not in love with me. And like the struggle of form and the trying to hold it into a steady state when it's not, it's constantly changing. The liberation from that is to recognize, well, I'm not those conditions that arise, but then what am I? And then I go, oh, well, I'm the energy. Okay. But that energy also comes to its own cessation. So this is where I'm saying where the resistance comes in. When I say, okay, I'm the energy, but then I see that energy comes to nothing at all,
Mm-hmm.
then am I nothing? Well, let's explore nothing. And you can feel this sort of the beginning of the dissipation of, or the unraveling, the unpacking of energy into that space. But if we wanted to go deeper into that space, what we'd find is more and more resistance to nothing, or resistance to death. Let's say that, okay? Death of the form, death of the energy, death of everything that I know. No, you're not
I
buying
don't
what.
connect with the word resistance, but
Okay,
keep trying to convince me. I know that you're perceiving something and you're putting words to it
okay.
in some way. Um,
Well, let's flip
I
the
think
language.
I feel this quality of love for reality.
Mhm.
So, for example, um, every single contact with something differentiated and non every contact with everything dual, you
Mhm.
know, has in it the doorway to the non-dual. Say, for example, I am feeling a massive amount of fear and resistance to letting go. I really don't like what my partner's doing, or I hate what this person said. And
Mhm.
that to me is, you could look at that as like, that's the thing to let go of and remember that there's a bigger thing. That's
Mhm.
lovely. Or you realize that the manifestation of the uncomfortable feeling itself is this like perfection of this fomenting fountain of reality just like gushing forth, and you surf it in a way
Mhm.
that also doesn't separate you from it, and therefore it's a doorway back to the absolute.
Mhm.
So does
Yeah,
that make
that's no, but
sense?
that's entertaining, and it's got like, it's got movie quality to it. But I mean, my interest has been in seeing, does, do these levels of reality actually have a deeper quality to them? In other words, do they collapse more and more into a singularity? So that, um, the qualities that you're talking about, can they can they be seen or understood or felt as a singular thing, singular quality
Yeah.
in which they're not me or you?
Yeah.
I'm not surfing. I'm
Right.
I'm the energy,
Right.
and
Yeah.
now that energy does not have time to it, does not have, it's not caused by anything. It simply is. So now we're in isness, right?
Right.
So energy and isness.
Yeah.
That's not very interesting, actually.
It's super
It
interesting.
is like being in the moment. Here we are. It's isness.
It's fucking great.
But it did. Okay, great. Tell me about the greatness of it. I
It
mean,
feels ecstatic to me.
yeah, but ecstasy is boring as shit.
No, it's not.
No, okay. Okay, go ahead. Tell me more. I learned this from you, by the way. It's like, tell me more. It's like, actually, I'm like, you're wrong. Let me
Is that
tell you,
what tell me
let me
more
tell you.
means? Okay, good
Yeah.
to know. Good to know.
Translate that into the Chinese. The mountain doesn't exist. Tell
Tell
me
me
more. I'm
more.
so interested. Go ahead.
Yeah, yeah.
Actually, I am interested. Go ahead.
What's your question?
I don't,
Ecstasy.
yeah,
Boring.
yeah,
I don't, boredom isn't what I experience.
yeah. Tell me about what ecstasy is. I get the space, which is expansive, and like all my synapses are on fire, and like I just want more of it. I might be having sex, I might be snorting cocaine or meth, I might be like seeing God for the first time, or okay, like wow. Now, let's just stay in that.
That's not what I'm talking
Okay,
about.
what are you talking
Well, I'm feeling it right now, and I'm not snorting meth.
about?
I'm
Okay,
not having sex.
good to know.
So I don't need a particular technology,
Mhm.
but it does feel vulnerable to talk about such a thing.
Mm.
Um, like kind of comes up like, who am I to claim that I'm ecstatic?
Mm.
Um, but it is a quality and that I've been feeling lately and I've been naming as such, and I haven't really talked to anybody about it.
Mhm.
Um, so I'll try right
Okay,
now
okay,
because that is some kind of cutting edge of Eros and creativity. I
okay.
don't know.
No, I mean, I actually am interested, this I am interested in. Like, once you use the word vulnerable, right, that sort of like changes the channel a little bit into a space which is actually very, very delicate.
Hmm.
And so now I'm tuned into that because that's in the space that we're actually trying to explore. So go.
Yeah, I think whenever trying to point to something precious,
Mhm.
um, I don't know, I feel a quality of vulnerability because it's really don't know. I don't know exactly why. It's like not to be thrown around lightly or anyways. So yeah, there's something that has a bit of like a somatic quality in my system. When I try to feel into it, imagery comes to mind, like a quality of a flame, like like something combusting, something like a clean burning moment of combustion.
Mm,
So it's almost like a combustion engine for all of isness, like everything's being like um incinerated the second it
mm,
exists,
mhm.
and that feels like pleasureful.
Well, why isn't pleasure also incinerated?
I don't know.
Okay. See, I would suggest that that pleasure is a kind of resistance to that flame. So there's an example, right? Like the, like we
Is
can't go.
resistance something that's not good?
No, it's not that it's not good. It's that we cannot, so far as human beings, we've not found our way to be able to enter that flame, what we're calling metaphorically a flame.
I feel like I enter it all the time.
Okay, but that's pleasurable. Right?
No, that
That's
might
what you,
not be pleasurable. Then awareness disappears. Then
mm,
there isn't the experience of pleasure.
mm,
But I don't really get to pull much back out from that world because
mm,
when I visit the place of unity, I'm not there.
okay.
So the place of ecstasy feels, perhaps this is like my provisional
Mhm,
idea. Honestly, I don't fucking know.
mhm,
But it feels like it's the edge place.
mhm.
So it's like um but it's just naturally arising. I'm not doing anything.
Right.
So
No, but that edge place is what we are actually talking about. When we
yeah.
talk about uh, Eros and creativity, to me, this is what you're calling the edge place. So we might just have, semantic language use, how we're doing it, but I
Yeah.
think this is, and maybe that's part of it, is to invent or find or rediscover language that's adequate to talk about or point to this space, because that's what we're attempting to do in this conversation, is to be able to actually create reality around this edge. I mean, this is what my feeling is, this is what we are sort of in the midst of creating now, both at Next Culture Network and my own life and your life, is a culture, a language, and a culture around the movement at this edge of whether nothingness is resisting and creating reality, or nothingness is actually ejaculating, using the Shiva image, reality. But still, whether it's the dynamic or the directionality of nothing or emptiness or the unitary, but that's the culture that we're trying to explore. And as you said, it's not like trying to explore it. It's like we are in that exploration. We are that exploration.
Right.
You can't come into it like, okay, I'm going to like find the lost river, and like go through the jungle and map out the mountain range.
Yeah.
That's not the way it seems to operate. You're in it, and you don't have language. You really just have vulnerability, which is the absence of a protective structure. And now, uh, can you and I find enough cultural expression to convey it to someone else, to create all the things that a culture are? That's a good question. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. Anna or Alex commented the word friction as perhaps an alternative to resistance. It sort of includes resistance and ejaculation in it. Yeah. Just wanted to add that in.
Yeah, friction. Well, that's an interesting one. Friction, but yeah, I guess for me, I'm trying to find language that doesn't suggest two things. And so for me, friction would be two things.
Doesn't resistance point to two things?
Resistance without two things. Just the quality itself.
Yeah,
And
but
maybe
resistance is like
yeah, so
inherently
let's
two
okay,
things,
so that's
you
a
know?
terrible word. I'm glad we've gotten rid of that
Yeah.
in this culture. So maybe so another piece of language that I've sometimes used is directionality, right? So that suggests or
It also points to two things, where you've been and where you're going.
yeah. So is there any language that we can use that doesn't have two things in it? Or do we have to constantly use language and the negation of that language? So directionality, but without two objects, like the positive and the negative, and then we're in dual again, positive and negative. So maybe we're just trapped in this thing, right? So maybe to talk about it is to create duality. And this is back to your point, which is like, it's a beautiful thing.
Well, also the first thing I said that I got from this book, that just words themselves are creating differentiated reality. And that's, to me, beautiful. It's just that these concepts are being born and, or, resisting or whatever it is, the moment that we're saying them. So yeah, I don't think that there's a way around that. Like words themselves are distinctions. They are discernments. They are pointing.
Okay, so so given that, let's accept that as fact for now, because we haven't actually demonstrated any way through language. So let's just say, okay, as we use language, we're also creating, well, probably creating agreement and disagreement, all kinds of dualities. But is there something that language can point to, or can foster, or support, that has the quality of non-duality? Like I know, for example, you've been very active in somatic inquiry, right? Where language goes to point to the body as, I don't know, the receptacle to some kind of intelligence. Is that a direction?
I'm not sure the question, but when I do somatic stuff, I feel like more what I'm doing is I'm entering as close as I can to an undifferentiated experience of which sensation is a part of the range, but there's less distinction. It's kind of like swimming in the field. And then afterwards, talking about it is then sort of trying to reintegrate it back into this,
right,
otherwise separate world where we categorize things. And
and I think I've approached it almost the opposite, which is that I've used language to point to and break down language into that undifferentiated,
that's beautiful.
So yeah, so that the language is used to negate itself, to deconstruct itself, so that I'm left with nothing.
Do it right now.
Yeah. Okay. So
I'm excited by that.
Yeah, you mean to break you down?
To break everything down.
Break everything. Well, the in the well-known and famous and amazing book, Doing Nothing.
Sentient Publications.
Yes. The title itself is the breakdown, right? Like, just hold that as a koan. Let's do nothing in this conversation.
I see. Yeah.
So now you're in a paradoxical space.
Yeah.
And when you say, well, I should speak, or I am speaking, You go, well, that's a doing, but that's not a nothing. And then I would go, okay, I'm going to shut up. That's a nothing, but it's not a doing. And so the paradox, I think, the space in which the known, the logical, the conditioned is pushed up against um, inconsistencies and um, its own negative.
Mhm.
That's the approach that I would take.
There's a Zen Sangha that I've been sitting with recently, Dragon Lake Zen, and I'm so grateful. It's really quite a lovely community. So I don't know, I'm just oddly a little bit into Zen recently. Very little. I mean, I haven't gone that deep. But it makes me think of the whole koan, if I'm pronouncing that right, that whole phenomenon is to use language in a way that,
Right,
blows your mind.
right, right.
Yeah.
And that can take you out of the verbal,
Yeah.
but it also can take you into the experiential. And this is where a lot of people get caught in spirituality in general, right? It's like, oh, I just left the verbal. Now I'm in this expanded space. That is it. Or that's something.
Yeah.
Right. So then there's a something. I have my Satori experience. And so I sit on my cushion. I go out of the verbal. I have Satori. Now I'm a teacher. I'll tell you how to do it. Right. So we haven't left actually thingness. We haven't left duality in that space. So, but
no, but perhaps there's certain people that are kind of surfing that are sort of ferrymen for the back and forth from those realms. I don't know. Again, I don't fundamentally hold the diverse world of a million things as problematic.
Yeah.
So, and again, so a way I kind of make it up is like maybe someone just really enjoys sitting on a cushion or calling themselves a Zen teacher, or we just enjoy talking to each other and thinking that perhaps there's some value to it. It's a fool's errand if we're trying for some kind of like empty perfection, but if there's delight, then that's one way of just surfing the erotic.
Okay. I mean, how many people in delight actually want to spend like 8 hours with their knees killing them, facing a wall?
What? Say that again?
The Zen experience is one of facing down pain, right? You're getting hit. I mean, I don't know what tradition you're in, but you've got people walking around with these big sticks, and if you move or you go out of posture, you get whacked.
Yeah.
Right. And so, and you're sitting there, the body doesn't really want to sit for long periods of time. So you're sitting with and through pain. So I'm just saying, like, doesn't look like an expression of happiness, ecstasy. It looks like someone trying to get somewhere.
Yeah.
Like they're trying to get away from something and get to something. Now, maybe in all that, they let go of it. And by the way, the subtitle of that amazing book, Doing Nothing, is Coming to the End of the Spiritual Search. So they may come to the end of the spiritual search after years of this. But I guess the question is, like, why start the spiritual search? You can come to the end of it by not starting it.
Maybe because you enjoy the process along the way, and
pain.
Why not?
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, of striving for something and maybe getting it, of having moments of attainment, of the game of playing different roles, or perhaps there's some really beautiful qualities that I do think overlap with spiritual practice, like devotion. You could say devotion is just an arising quality that might make some people want to, I am going to trust this person. And if they hit me with a stick, I'm going to so devotionally receive that. that I tend to think in that case, it's the devotion that was already there that creates the transformative experience and not the stick per se. But so there's love as an underpinning, or there's devotion as an underpinning, or maybe there's self-hatred as an underpinning, or, false longing as an underpinning, or,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah. No, but that
yeah.
becomes the exploration. I mean, many years ago, I think I was like 18 or something like that. And I got in with this, I think it was a Ramana Maharshi or Paul Brunton, I think was the lineage. And this guy was a was a meditation teacher and also kind of like a kind of a non-dualist, I guess. But anyway, in that meditation, he would literally walk around with symbols, like orchestra symbols, and you were supposed to be learning concentration, meaning that your mind had one point to it. There was nothing else in the universe. And the way you would find out if that was true or not was that he would smash those symbols right behind your head. Now, for me at that age, what was I doing there? You know, I mean, it seemed to me like, seems to me now that what I was looking for was power, essentially,
Mm-hmm.
like control
Mm-hmm.
over the universe. But
Mm-hmm.
the discovery
That's
wasn't,
hot.
yeah, I know. And
Yeah.
that's, I mean,
Yeah. Get it.
unfortunately, at that time, it also went with this exploration of celibacy. So I was like I wasted some hotness on that exploration too. It's like, but that was also about power, right? If you're like celibate and you like have cymbals crashing and you're one pointed, you basically are the master of the universe.
That's hot to
Because
me.
then, Shakti can come and dance all she wants, but I'm not going to ejaculate. I am just like so one pointed, right?
Ooh.
Well, it turned out that none of that was true. But
Sounds like resistance to Shakti.
Okay, now go there. I knew you were gonna get there eventually. Yeah, so that's resistance, exactly.
Yeah.
That's my point. That is the point. So power in that case, in my case, was resistance to what you're saying, which is the flow of reality in all its forms. And you're saying, okay, well, that's a beautiful thing. And I agree it has a certain aesthetic to it, but beauty also then has to be all the things that Shakti shows up at, which is also like one of the aspects of Kali, exactly.
Yeah.
So now you've got all of the like the not so beautiful, or the beauty
Yeah.
in,
Life bangs cymbals and
yeah,
whacks you with sticks
yeah,
just
like
all the
pain and
time.
suffering
Yeah.
and violence and all the
Yes.
horrors that human beings um, manifest, right? So that's part of that flow of reality and part of what we are collectively and individually exploring.
Yeah.
Much of it, despite our not wanting that, you
Yeah.
know. So then, is there any differentiation that you can see in that flow of reality, or is it like, hey, reality is flowing. I'm the manifestation of the moment, and that's it. Is there anything else going on?
I fundamentally, I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what differentiates for you the difference between, let's say, a flower blossoming and some drunk guy punching out some other drunk guy, or some other violent or war, like, I don't know, Ukraine or Gaza or whatever is like the horror of the moment is, right? Or a beautiful symphony. Is it the same to you, or is there something that is aspirational about moving reality in a certain direction?
Mm, yeah. Well, that kind of explodes my brain. That question,
Mm,
how do I hold that? Like, I very much do not want, you know, children to be sexually trafficked.
mm,
Um, and so I very much would like to think that there is a maturational direction to human consciousness, and that we can more and more collectively move in said direction. And then how to paradoxically square that with this sort of like undifferentiated one thing happening. which sort of has a quality of perfection because there is not dualistic right or wrong in it. I don't know in this moment how to square that. How do you square that?
Well, I would say the easiest thing for me to do is to just disassociate.
Good idea.
Just like, yeah. So just reside in, in the grand emptiness of it all. Yeah, it's just phenomenology arising, passing away. It's a beautiful flower, it's a dead child, it's a war, it's peace. It's just, the arising of empty phenomenology. Or I can enter into that phenomenology, and now I have a very distinct opinion of what is good and what is bad, and now I can act to try to shape that. And to do that, I try to aggregate power. And that power might be through convincement, it might be through control, it might be through overwhelming someone.
Or combining with others who are working on the mission,
political,
or
political. So these are the forms that I can take on. Now, the question is, can I descend from the disassociated, and can I have full contact with all the forms of reality, the painful and the beautiful? In other words, the range of capacity is to be completely with the abject violence and horror, and completely with the beauty. And in that collapse of the fully open, the totally singular with the aspect, which is the manifestation, is there a tantric reality that emerges? Now we're back to Eros, right? And creativity. And now this is, I think, where we've come to like the beginning point of our conversation as we come to the end of it, which is there something in that collapse of the two things into one thing in which I don't disassociate, but I actually become the thing itself, that that is transformational? The inability to separate from what is the phenomenology, and at the same time the inability to say that phenomenology is substantive. Are we in a quantum space in which we're measuring it, or measuring reality? That is, this is the manifestation, but we also see that there is an unlimited number of universes that come from that manifestation. And in that multiverse, what's the directionality of that tantric energy?
Love it.
What do you think?
Well, as you were speaking, I was having a whole thing that I could launch into right now, but I think maybe save it for next time. That was kind of bringing me back to the somatic as a limitation worth honoring. There's a certain way that exercising my energy is healthy for this body and applying myself in connection with the manifest world. And there's a way that I can only take on so much stress or be involved in so many causes. And so there's also just this like vetting that my somatic reality, and that feels tantric as well too. So, but
yeah, I think that's an area, the somatic is an area I'm very much a beginner at exploring. So I think that would be an interesting topic. Again, we're going to be trying to use words until we get our studio set up where we can have like a camera that's able to move or follow.
Or until we're able to just like beam our thoughts like directly into people's mind stream.
That's the third episode.
Yeah.
Right. See you next time.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.